Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dynamics Podcast. My name is Fredrik Sætre, and we're back. Yeah, new season, new guests, new people. But again, I couldn't do it without my trusted accomplice. Of course, hello, Tommy.
Hi, Fredrik. Thank you so much for keeping me in the loop.
Well,
yeah.
So it's been a while since we did a podcast now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was about time. I had a discussion with one of my colleagues today, and I saw that on my blog. It's been 2 years since I actually put something in there, so it's time to give something back.
You think we've been missed? You think the audience has missed us?
I don't know. If you've missed us and you haven't already subscribed, please do so. It's going to be a different type of podcast this year, this season. I'm thinking we'll do shorter episodes with a lot more focused content. So this is going to be a special episode where we just talk about what's been happening and what's going on, and we'll jump into some topics in the next podcast. All right. So well, I started at Microsoft. That's the mainly reason why I actually stopped doing the podcasts. There was just too much to do. And that was a really good excuse for a while, but after it just got old. So it was about time to kind of pick it up again. And in the meantime, Tommy, you also did a transition. So I'm thinking we had it wasn't meant to be, but it kind of become a catchphrase. It's like, so Tommy, please tell us who you are, what you do, and how'd you get there?
Okay. Well, you're right. It's been over a year since we did anything on this podcast. So I hope the audience has missed us a little bit. I've missed doing this because it's a lot of fun. And we get to talk about interesting topics. So yeah, where am I now? I'm at Microsoft, started there in February, been there for half a year. Before that, I was 10 years in the partner channel. Working with you, Fredrik, for 10 years.
Yep.
So, right now I'm working at the R&D department with the product I love, which is Dynamics 365 for finance operations. Now it's slightly changed in name. It's finance and SCM and
commerce and retail. Or
commerce and retail. Yeah.
No, commerce and talent.
So. Yeah, I get a feeling I have to bite my tongue and make sure that I don't say anything that I'm not supposed to say, even more so than when I was an MVP, because that's also true. I was MVP for 6 years before I started at Microsoft, and when you start at Microsoft, you have to throw that under the bus. But I really love working at Microsoft, and I love the connection and in my day-to-day work, I get to talk to partners and customers all over the world, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah. So what's funny is that I don't think we could be further apart within the Microsoft organization. If we look up the tree, our first common kind of supervisor, let's call him that, would be Satya Nadella.
Oh.
You didn't know that?
No, I haven't checked that actually.
So I'm under the sales and marketing department, which is headed up by Jean-Philippe Courtois, and you're under R&D, which is headed up by Scott Guthrie.
Yep.
So but we're still working on the same product, and that's how we're kind of organized. I work every day with sales, and you work every day with helping them move on from there.
Yeah, so that's also, I didn't mention it, but I do work at R&D with the FastTrack program. And FastTrack is anyone who has been part of implementing finance operations has seen FastTrack at some level. Because
well, hopefully they have.
Yeah, hopefully. And maybe some have heard about FastTrack in relation to, let's say, Azure or Office or other products at Microsoft. But for finance operations, at least, FastTrack is involved for every single implementation. So even the smallest ones get in touch with the FastTrack program.
Yeah.
Which I find to be a really good thing. It's a good investment on Microsoft's side, to be honest.
Yeah. So because we do have more skin in the game now with the customers. I think before it was just partners fronting everything, and Microsoft was just a product. But now we do have as it is a service, and we have to make sure that it's properly set up and that the customers get a good experience of it. And not that partners can't do that, but it's just an additional kind of quality assurance that is working. So what do you do every day? And when you get up and turn on your computer, what's the first thing kind of that meets you? If you can talk about it. If it's a secret, we'll move on to something.
I'm sure I can talk about it. I've been advised not to check my emails in the morning, but that's typically what I do. There's even this analytical stuff we have here at Microsoft that tells me that I'm checking my email too often. Apparently, so.
It's the you're talking about my analytics.
My analytics, yes, yep. That's right. So I got a warning yesterday. I'm checking my email too often, but that's why I will start my day. My primary business is actually looking at the projects that are in the Essentials program of FastTrack. And they are in the hundreds, even in the thousands. I mean, there's so many of them, and they keep coming in every single day. More projects are added on the global basis. And we have people taking care of the different regions of the world. So you have Americas, EMEA, and APAC. And every single project gets through an onboarding phase. And we discussed what we can touch upon in this podcast. And one of the things I see some partners end up with is they think they can purchase the product and then they can get production, say, next week or this week. but that's not the case. There is a process now that is fairly well documented, I would say, on Docs, where you can tell that every project needs to go through a phase where it's getting matured into a place where they will get production environment. But I don't want to use the word gatekeeping, but it's almost like a little bit of a gatekeeping to make sure that the customer and the partner is ready. So they have a certain level of readiness before they can start with the production environment. And I think one of the reasons some implementations are turned upside down is because of what we know from previous versions of the product, where in earlier versions of the product, you would perhaps much sooner go ahead and start configuring production and then copy it downwards, downstream to your pre-prod and development environment. But it's almost turned upside down with the cloud solution because you want to make sure everything is ready before you get production. And then you run into this, well, I need to have a golden configuration set up, and then I need to copy that around from my golden environment over to my pre-production environment, and then finally to my production environment. And there's a whole database lifecycle management you have to consider that maybe some partners are not accustomed with and haven't done before. So
I think they're getting there. Because getting into this new world was a bit different, and I think also partners now have to fundamentally think differently on how they implement and how they run the projects. I remember I like the analogy where you go before when you started the project, you ran through it, you did the implementation, and then you got to the end line, and that was kind of goal. Production is up and running, and it started. Now we can leave the customer alone for a while and let them be after kind of they stabilize that startup. But I think now it's more of instead of getting to the finish line, we're getting to the starting line, and then we will do much more. And I think it's important to scope down, and I don't think every partner actually is prepared for the maintenance and upkeep and connection they have to have with the customers. If the customers are if they're well off with, they can just run it themselves. But I think many partners need to kind of change the mentality of when they go live, that's when the party starts. That's when you can actually start doing more for the customers. So
and also if a lot of partners have matured, obviously, doing a lot of implementations, but also the process that FastTrack is sort of pushing has also matured. If you did implementations back in 2016, 2017, the process was slightly different compared to how it is today. And the process has also come to a place where it is today because of the experience Microsoft has with all of the different implementations out there. If you think about it, any specific partner will have any experience within that partner, and they might not have like a broader communication with other partners and other implementations. So they are basing their work out of their own experience. And it might even be within that specific partner that only a subset of those professionals have that skill set and knowledge. So when Microsoft is working with this, it's working across partners, across implementations, so they can see what is a good pattern, what's a good methodology, and try to share that. Because it's also very important to emphasize that FastTrack is not there to replace the partner in any sense. It's there to drive customer and partner success and make sure that the implementation is a success. That's the whole point of it. Yeah.
So we do have two different. You said you were part of the Essentials team, which is what everybody gets, I would assume. Or, yeah, and then we have an additional offering for people who kind of do some pre-commit or have a larger commitment to the product, and they start off with a larger set of at least for the bigger customers, I would say, where they need additional attention, or what do you kind of get with that? What do we call that? Is that just FastTrack?
Yeah, it's FastTrack Standard, FastTrack Regular, or just FastTrack. But in a sense, it's a more higher touch involvement from Microsoft to sort of help and drive success for the bigger implementations. So right now, it's based out of how many enterprise eligible licenses you have. And this is fairly well documented on Docs as well, how this is set up and what you get. But what I would emphasize is that so all of these workshops you get through that program, you still have to be investing on this upfront. And so, for example, if a customer or a partner decides to run with the minimum bar type of licenses, and then a month before go live, they're going to acquire the remaining licenses, then it's too late to have that same type of involvement because there's not enough time to run all the necessary workshops. And the purpose of that program is evaporated. There's no sense. There's not enough time to do the workshops because they need planning, they need resources, and they typically involve someone coming on site at the customer end. So that approach is not going to work. You need to make that investment way ahead of time if you want to be part of that program. So there are some scenarios where partner customer does not involve FastTrack for their implementation. Might be that the partner is so experienced that they feel like they're going to run this themselves. They don't need the help from Microsoft, and I guess that's fair. But personally, I see a huge value if you have that offer from Microsoft. It just comes with a product. Then I don't see any good reasons why you wouldn't, accept that help. To put it that way.
It's sort of like a crossing the starting line with Microsoft kind of holding your hand and pushing you along and say, "There you go. Now we're ready to start the race." Yeah, just to get the quality assurance of the project. And I think from a partner perspective, it's really nice to have that sign up to say, look at this, our customer, like we've done our due diligence and everything all the boxes are ticked, and Microsoft says that we're ready to start this implementation. And I think if something happens after that, at least they have somewhere to say like, okay, well, we did what we were supposed to do. These are maybe inconsequential issues that's running into it. Because there are some. Have you seen any issues? Like, what are the regular things? If you can say anything, like what do people forget? What do we kind of run into?
Well, I guess one thing that is downplayed perhaps too much is doing any type of upfront performance testing or analysis of how performance is going to play. Maybe there's this hidden assumption that this is cloud, so it's just going to scale. that's not necessarily true, because it depends on how many users are you going to throw on the system, and how many transactions are you going to throw on the system. It's not like you're going to get any type of implementation is going to get the same size, which is like the max size of the biggest, strongest environment. That wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be reasonable.
And that's so just asking for like scaling the right environment. I'm thinking, as opposed to a multi-tenant solution, we're running a single-tenant infrastructure. But I'm thinking from a customer perspective, do they have to think about scaling? Think about the cost of the scales or scaling the solution, or is that just something they say, I'm going to use this much oomph and I need to kind of set it up for me?
Yeah, I'm not a licensed expert, but to my understanding, you have to think about the numbers of users you are acquiring to the product, and also when you do the subscription estimate inside of the lifecycle services, you also tell us how many transactions you're trying to push through the system. Now, through the go live assessment process, which is a process that we do before go live, we might question those numbers. I mean, if you think you're going to throw in 20 users, but you're going to throw in 500,000 transactions, and they're going to be like interactive transactions, I don't know what kind of users you are using, but that sounds like inhumane users. Or if you are, let's say you have 20 users, but you're still going to throw 500,000 in a batch. And it's like, okay, what is that? What are those transactions? Where are they coming from?
Yeah.
Are you using the product as just a way to flow through transactions coming from some other external data harvesting system? What's going on?
Okay. From a licensing perspective, this is important to be aware of, that if you kind of run into these scenarios where you have an upfront system feeding information into a sales order or production order or anything like that, you have to make sure that you have the right licenses for the people who are running an unbreaking data chain in the front. We call it multiplexing. So if you look up multiplexing in the licensing agreement, you won't get into these issues where you have this upfront scaling issue.
Yeah, and I think these questions are reasonable. Everybody with some common sense will understand that this is just the way it works. It's not like you can throw whatever on it and it's just going to work. So performance testing and I mean, performance testing is not necessarily something that everybody is doing it. That's what I'm seeing. But what I typically ask is at least the customer is aware that you haven't done any performance testing. And if the customer is signing off on that, then well, I typically will question that, but what can you do? At least we do expect you to do more or less a full UAT of every business process that is critical before you even think about going live, and that's just also common sense. So.
Yeah, but I think of the way that they probably license, right? Because you don't want to buy, if you're going live with 400 users, you won't buy that up front. So you're not going to have that license mass during the implementation, because then you can just go with a bare minimum. But you're saying if they start with the 20, we scale. If you buy 20 licenses, we will scale the environment for 20 users. And then when you go live, if you suddenly like push it 400 or 500 users into the system, we would have some leeway to be able to scale that environment up to the right size before you go live. So how would you do that? Is there a process of sending that in where you want to do that?
Yeah, so everything around that is in change. So this is getting more and more mature over time. So what I will say today will probably not be true 6 months from now anyway. But sure, you might actually have to reach out to support and tell Microsoft that look, we're gonna add another 400 users, or we're gonna add a ton of new load to the system, and we might have to have a dialogue to see, do we need to have a scale out, and does that even require some sort of downtime window? Over time, all of these questions will have a better answer than they have today, but it's just the way it is.
And I don't think from a customer perspective, the only thing you have to be aware of is that you need to, if you have large increases in capacity requirements, you simply just have to kind of tell that up front, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and you were asking another thing we see, but I see it less and less, but I still see invalid use or setup of application lifecycle management out there. So anytime you have something that is non-Microsoft, any customization ISV or any customizations delivered by the partner, if you do not have a proper ALM story, then you will get hurt. And I would say it's too many implementations out there where there is no proper ALM story. And I'm not entirely sure what the reason is. It could be that it's not everybody succeeded in setting it up. Or I don't know. Or it's just too easy to, right now it's too easy to do this without having a proper ALM story set up. That could also be true. But then again, I also see a lot of partners out there who are really proficient and professional on this and do set it up the proper way.
Yeah. Well, good. I think we should. These are topics that we will deep dive into later on in the season.
If people are interested in hearing that, so put your comments below.
Oh yeah.
YouTubers say
we got to get better on pushing people to subscribe and also hit that bell because we're actually transmitting this live right now. So if you haven't kind of rung the bell on our subscription, you won't get informed about us publishing anything. At least if you're on YouTube. If you're on podcasts, just make sure that you're subscribed, right? So we'll push these out to through the podcasting channel and as well through our YouTube channel. And we'll see if we can publish this anymore. But thank you, Tommy. I think we'll call it quits for the first episode by this, and we'll return. Well, next week. I'll publish it this next week, but then we'll talk a bit about the process of where do you go from when you bought the licenses to go live.
Yeah, we can do that.
Good.
Cool.